Hi, this is my review of the Cybertronic sourcebook for the Mutant Chronicles 3rd edition role-playing game. Cybertronic is quite controversial and shady when compared to the other corporations, because this is the youngest corporation, but it's also the one who has taken more risks when it comes to the use of high technology, because the dark symmetry is always there waiting to corrupt anything that has to do with high technology. So it's somewhat of a mystery as to how does Cybertronic use all those cybernetic implants and weaponry and vehicles without becoming corrupted by the dark symmetry. Although some say that Cybertronic has already fallen under the control of the dark symmetry. So this sourcebook discloses all those secrets, mysteries, and the structure of the organization, all the careers and vehicles and gear. So I'm going to try to keep this review as spoiler-free as possible, because I know that some players could be watching this because they are interested in the new careers and weapons and such. So I'll try to keep things as spoiler-free as I can. Now let's talk about the quality of the PDF. The quality is excellent overall, however there is one small error. The document is fully bookmarked, but there is a section, the section on Cybertronic in a campaign, that simply doesn't work. You click on the bookmark and it doesn't take you anywhere. So I'm going to notify Modifius about that in case they haven't seen this error, and they will probably update this in the near future. And as I was telling you, the document is fully bookmarked, you have an index, and you also have an option to turn layers on and off. So this document is quite printer friendly. And the illustrations are awesome. They kind of look like those 80s illustrations of cyborgs and such. So they feel quite retro. And the organization is great. The graphic design and layout in general is very immersive, as well as the writing style, because sometimes you're going to feel like you're an employee of Cybertronic and sometimes you're going to feel like a reporter, but you have these little messages as you read the document that for example, you have a welcoming message as if you have just entered Cybertronic, sorry, and it tells you something like, oh, welcome to Cybertronic, your future is assured, don't believe all those lies that we are mind controlling people, but we're going to put an implant inside of your brain, but it's very cool, it's like having a secretary inside your head, blah blah blah. So they're kind of like, they look quite shady from the very start. And you're also going to get messages as if someone hacked into the communication system of Cybertronic, and they're going to tell you like, oh, don't believe their lies, this is an evil corporation, get out of there, and stuff like that. So everything feels quite immersive. Now let's talk about the contents. Cybertronic has a very complex history. Let's start with the founding day, which is the most controversial and perhaps catastrophic event related to Cybertronic, because this is basically a huge market crash. The stocks suddenly appeared and disappeared, and some of them that were up suddenly plunged, and everything was chaos. Things were so bad that a lot of the Mishima stockbrokers committed a ritual suicide right then and there. And the only corporation who benefited from this chaos was Cybertronic. So that was quite convenient. And so many people believe that they had something to do with the catastrophe that day, that they manipulated the stocks, or that they had some way to foresee or predict what was going to happen. And so that's the way Cybertronic managed to get to the top of things, despite being quite young in comparison to the other corporations. And the controversies just became even more and more shady, like a sort of like a snowball effect of sorts. And now when it comes to the structure of Cybertronic, it feels quite Kabbalistic in my opinion. You have this pyramid structure with Alexander Durand at the top. Now, Cybertronic is very much related to the Durand brothers. If you haven't seen my review of the Brotherhood sourcebook, I recommend that you do so. I'm going to put a link in the description below, because Alexander Durand is the one who founded and governs Cybertronic. And so you have this pyramid structure, and there are 3 pillars that serve as the main body of this structure. Now, each of these pillars represents sort of like a polarity within Cybertronic. You have the RDM pillar that represents the female aspect of Cybertronic. And that doesn't mean that only women work there, and you're going to find people of both genders. And this pillar has to do with research and development and manufacturing, so it's kind of like the life-giving aspect of, or nurturing aspect of Cybertronic. That's why it's the female side. And you also have the SWI, which is basically the male aspect, the hunter and protector side of Cybertronic. These are basically like the military force that are there to protect the Cybertronic personnel and to carry out different missions. And then you have a balancing aspect between the male and female, which represents like the side of reason and of logic, which is the AEM, the Administration, Economic and Management. And this is basically composed of magistrates, of lawyers and cops that keep order within Cybertronic. Now, each of these pillars is divided in divisions. You have 12 divisions total, and each of these divisions has a lot of adventure seats and NPCs, so you can build lots of campaigns based on these divisions and the different tasks that they carry out. And as you study each of these divisions, you're going to realize that Cybertronic feels a bit more machine than human and the current time within the Mutant Chronicles timeline, because some of their decisions are quite cold and perhaps logic, but they still feel somewhat inhuman at times. So for example, an agent of Cybertronic will not hesitate if he needs to sacrifice women, children, or any innocent bystander. They will accept that as an acceptable loss or sacrifice if they manage to accomplish an objective or a mission. So that's the somewhat the cruel aspect of Cybertronic, although they are completely committed to fighting the dark symmetry and protecting mankind, but one has to wonder who's going to protect mankind from them. So it's very controversial, because you have all these agents and employees of Cybertronic that are basically like half machine, half humans, like living tools. And in more ways than one, the will of Alexander manifests through the board of directors, and that's part of the mysteries of Cybertronic, because basically Alexander is Cybertronic. Now let's explore a bit more when it comes to the relationship between Alexander and Cybertronic, or how Alexander became Cybertronic. Well, everything began with Alexander and Peter, who were grieving the loss of their brother, of Nathaniel. And Peter moved on, but Alexander became quite obsessed. He wanted to conquer death, and he even wanted to clone Nathaniel, but at the end he realized that he wanted to replace parts of the body that were inferior when compared to machines. So this is a theme of transhumanism of sorts. But he lacked the knowledge and technology to do that, especially with the risk that the dark symmetry was there to corrupt anything high technology. However, he found this forgotten warrior known as the Immortal. And the Immortal is a hybrid of man and machine, and probably one of the most advanced examples of his kind. And he became friends with the Immortal, and the Immortal served as a blueprint to develop high technology. And Alexander and the Immortal shared some views, and they shared that friendship. But as time went by, the Immortal noticed that Alexander became more and more inhuman and more obsessed with technology, to the point that the means to an end transformed into an end by itself. But there was still that problem that the dark symmetry corrupted technology quite easily. And there were many experiments that were carried out, Alexander even built a city known as Cyberopolis that was like a Skinner box just there to serve as a sort of like a lab or testing grounds to put people and technology and see how the dark symmetry corrupted them. And through these somewhat cruel experiments, Alexander noticed that there was a specific thing, and I am going to keep this a secret in case the game master of a particular campaign wants to use it as a sort of mystery. There is a thing that keeps you safe from the dark symmetry when using high technology, and Alexander took this as a sort of like a protective amulet or talisman, and all the implants and high technology of Cybertronic has this integrated into them. So that's how Cybertronic manages to be so high tech when everyone else is so afraid of high technology. And something that could be considered one of the signs that Alexander is becoming less and less human is the subreality. And subreality is basically a virtual reality that at first was created as a sort of like a training ground or a facility of sorts. However, it started to grow, and Alexander noticed that this could serve as an artificial reality, or perhaps even a substitute of reality, because it was made available to the public. Only the richest could afford entering this sub-reality, and they could enjoy all sorts of pleasures and risks within this controlled reality. So they could sleep around, use drugs, participate in bloody matches, and because there was a way to avoid the risks that the bad things that would happen to you if you did that in real life, Subreality was quite attractive. It was like a place where you could do pretty much anything that you want, and some celebrities became quite popular and just got a lot of acceptance from the public in general, because they took advantage of the augmented reality of this sub-reality. So for example, you have Patty Page, which is an actress that released the sex tape, but the thing is that when you watch the sex tape, you experience what her boyfriend was experiencing with her while they were having sex. So everybody just loved her. And you can see how this sub-reality can be manipulated to gain acceptance that would otherwise be impossible in the real world. And there are many places within this sub-reality to explore. You can have a lot of adventures here. You have the arena, you have a Crush, Kill, Maim studios, you have the parks and different recreational centers, etc, etc. You can have a lot of adventures here. And you have rules for hacking if you want to hack into the sub-reality, or if you want to protect sub-reality in case you're an employee of Cybertronic. You have all the information here. And now you have an entire chapter on how to use Cybertronic in a campaign, of how the Cybertronic forces are quite different from the other forces in the corporations. So for example, there was a Bauhaus general, I think, that said that a soldier of Cybertronic is worth 5 of their own, and of course this general was executed because he was a Bauhaus general, and Bauhaus is quite proud of its military achievements. So when you play as a character of Cybertronic, you're the best of the best. You're an unstoppable killing machine if it's needed. In fact, you have the possibility to play as a machine. I'll talk a bit more about that in a few minutes. So you have all the information here on how to use Cybertronic in a campaign. Maybe you work for Cybertronic, or maybe you work within Cybertronic, where you're actually a sort of like a rebel who is helping the Immortal, who is not happy with how Alexander is handling things. There are many ways in which you can use Cybertronic. You could even work for Cybertronic as sort of like a mercenary. And of course, Cybertronic is also perfect to serve as an antagonist, especially if you belong to the Brotherhood. Because the Brotherhood represents sort of like the opposite of Cybertronic. While Cybertronic has more power in the use of high technology, in a sense it's more materialistic. The Brotherhood is all about the art and the power of spirituality. So they are kind of like opposites. And you have all the rules to create a Cybertronic character. there are some things that you will have to replace in the process that is presented in the Mutant Chronicles core book, especially when it comes to the life path section, but everything is quite easy to understand. Now, you have different types of Cybertronic characters. You could be a VACS or VAX, which means a volunteer associate citizen. And these are the corporate drones. They are kind of like the people in obscurity. You have access to the Cybertronic implants and such, but they are not like the best of the best. But it's still quite interesting to play as them, to become stronger and rise through the ranks of Cybertronics as you adventure on. And then you have the TIFFS or TIFs, which means fatality or foreign transferred in. And these are the soldiers that were lost in battle, perhaps even belonging to other corporations, and they took them and like a sort of like a Frankenstein monster, although not as monstrous, hopefully, they reconstructed them and they now work for Cybertronic, and they feel a lot like the Universal Soldier. You remember that movie? So that's pretty cool. And you also have the Cuirassier, and the Cuirassier are the battlefield thinking machines. These are basically artificial intelligences about the size of an egg, and they can be placed inside vehicles and mecha bodies of sorts. So if you want to play like the Terminator, this is the perfect character type for that. And of course, your character is going to... Oh, I forgot one important one, neo-clones. So these humans were created at labs using tissue and engineered genetics. So they're somewhat artificial and somewhat... or organic in a sense, well, or at least part natural, part artificial. And so you have those options as character types, and each of these character types is going to feel quite different. You're going to belong to a different pillar that I mentioned before, one of the three pillars that represent the male, female, and the reason aspect of Cybertronic. And you will have different things when it comes to attribute bonuses. So for example, if you belong to the AEM pillar, you're going to have a bonus to intelligence and mental strength, and you will have a pick of education or lifestyle as your skill, and each pillar has similar bonuses. So for example, if you have the SWI, you're going to have a bonus to agility and coordination, and you're going to be very good at close combat or at ranged fighting. And you're going to have different equipment based on the pillars. You're going to have different environments as a place of origin or where you move around. And of course, you're going to have event tables. And for example, you have the adolescent event tables with results such as financial incentive. Problematic signs in your aptitude testing result in you being given a poorer work placement. So you have a trait of low expectations and you reduce your earnings rating by 1. But you will also have some positive ones. So for example, you have the no fear. The synthetic nature of subreality skewed your perceptions, and you seldom regard even deadly peril with the fear such situations should warrant. So you're reckless, and this means that you reduce the difficulty of willpower tests against mental assaults by 1. So there are some positive things. And you also have a good selection of primary careers, each related to one of the 3 pillars of Cybertronic. So maybe you belong to the legislation and applied justice division, or maybe to the education, training, and publicity division. All of the divisions are quite specialized. And of course, you're also going to have iconic careers. And the iconic careers here in Cybertronic just feel really cool. They really make you feel like you're an elite soldier or agent of sorts. So for example, you have the enhanced chasseur, and this really makes you feel like a Frankenstein monster. You are larger and stronger and faster, enhanced in every way possible. You could also be a spokesperson or an experimental psychologist, or you could be a Reaver, who is basically a soldier specialized in fighting the Brotherhood. You could also be the Silent, which is someone specialized in stealth operations. And you could also be a shock trooper, a technoseer, an artificial intelligence programmer, an arbiter, a Subreality star, in case you want to make it big there in Subreality, or a Mirror Man, which is basically the knight in shining armor, quite literally, of Cybertronic. And you could be a cyber surgeon. And you also have some options that are exclusive for neoclones and cuirassiers, depending on concerning different implants and bodies in the case of the cuirassier. So for example, being an artificial intelligence, you could be placed inside a body that feels like a walking tank, like an Ultra Attila MK3 body. But the game master will have to approve using such things. It's the choice of the game master according to the campaign, because it could feel a bit too powerful for the type of adventures that you're carrying out. And you have an extensive section of equipment and gear. You have cybernetic implants of all sorts. You have adamantine claws, artificial lungs. You have cyber limbs. You can pretty much replace any part of your body one of these implants, and you could even add additional limbs if you wanted to. So as I was telling you, the transhumanist theme is quite strong. And you have a lot of weapons, both that serve in close combat and ranged attack, and also armor. You have like the IAS 3100 blink generator, a lot of integrated armor systems. And some of the weapons are, for example, you have the chain carbine assault rifle, and you have the power fist, a classic in science fiction. And you have many ways in which you can modify your weapons with, so for example, you have a safe target system, a small flamethrower that you can add to your weapons, many different things. And you even have some prototype equipment that is reserved for the thieves, because they are the best of the best and capable of handling the repercussions of using these prototypes. And you have vehicles such air, ground, and spacecraft. You have some vehicles such as the Nova, or also known as the Chrome Bird. You have the Armadillo hover tank. And you have the Sky Witch 2. A lot of cool different things. And when it comes to spacecraft, you have the Temeraire class Interceptor and the Tonnant class Corvette. And at the end of the PDF, you have an adventure, and this adventure is really going to take the player characters out of their comfort zones, because it's an adventure that features the sub-reality aspect of Cybertronic, of investigating this other dimension and finding out what happened to an agent that works for Capital. So this is Imperial Archive. For Imperial. So this is an adventure that's going to get you in the thick of things, of this virtual reality world, and your characters are going to feel at times like they are just out of place in an alien environment, and they still don't know what happened to this agent. It's going to be quite cool, quite immersive, and there are many ways in which this adventure could result in a negative or positive outcome. You could get new enemies and allies during this adventure, and develop the entire outcome in a full Cybertronic campaign. Now let's talk about what I think of Cybertronic. If you like transhumanism, the use of high technology, exploring shady secrets, and those themes that have to do with the unethical questions and immorality, and how far can you go to fight something, in this case the dark symmetry, before becoming a monster yourself, you should definitely get the Cybertronic source book. It's definitely one of the most immersive source books that I've seen so far. And it explores many things that could represent a parallel with our world, with technology constantly moving forward, and seeing how it affects our life. This is a very interesting source book. Well, thanks for watching my review. If you have any comments or questions, please let me know. See you later.